Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy's Ted.
And this adventuring party says these character classes are so lame.
Jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So we have another viewer suggestion from Abel, and he wants to know, what do you do when your players just won't play certain classes?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I read this one. He says that his players find that clerics, bards, and paladins are lame, and every single one of the players at his table refuse to play them.
Right. So they don't play them. End the video. Here we go. Now, so here's the thing, right? Like, one is, why won't they play them? Two, I really do believe I don't actually care what my players play. I'll just present, I'll present a story, and it'll interact with whatever they've chosen. Like, it's not my job to convince them that they need to be this or be that. Like, I literally added a new player to my game the other night, and she wanted to know, well, what does the party need? What's in the party? I'm like, this is what's here, and I really don't care what you play. Play whatever you want. I'm more concerned with the player having fun with the character they come up with.
Absolutely. I look at it from both sides. As a DM, it is your job to plan an adventure that the party is able to handle, whatever they're made up of. If every single one of them is playing a spellcaster, and arcane at that, okay, they're going to have a lot of boom, they're not going to have a lot of hit points. So they're going to mow through a lot of small encounters, but a big solo monster that's resistant to magic might eat them alive. So what do? You have to look at that party makeup and plan encounters that are appropriate. In his case, he doesn't have players that want to play casters that have access to healing magic. So he's like,
That's not entirely true. There's still druid and rangers.
Well, true, but he comes up with, do I give them potions? How do I handle, the healing side of things? So, yes, if they are playing druids and rangers and they are using that as their curatives, yay, great. If not, well, then you're going to have to plan games where they're going to have to take more rests to try and use their hit dice. 5th edition doesn't need a cleric to get through that kind of stuff. Your injuries are not like, oh my god, I'm bleeding to death here because I've taken some damage. No, it's supposed to represent your exhaustion or, the fatigue of actual fighting. When you actually take a shot that brings you to 0 or close to, that's when you're actually physically injured. Or at least that's my interpretation.
Yeah, that's when you take a movement. Until the next day, of course. Then it's gone.
Well,
but that being said, 5th edition, you have your healing hit dice, and you have a long rest. You get all your hit points back, so you really don't need a healer. And you know what? If you're concerned about it and they're not, you actually answered your own question, right? Don't put that stuff in there and show them how lame those characters are when you don't have them, right? Don't worry about it. It's not your problem. It's their problem.
So if you want to encourage people to play certain classes, then give the need for that in your game. But I wouldn't stress out over this. If the players are enjoying themselves, if they're honestly having fun at the table without having certain classes, great. No worries.
So,
game on.
So the other thing too is, it's not so much that I feel like you need to convince them that these classes are fun, which I find it odd anyway, because the paladin does so much damage in 5th edition anyway. It does the most damage of all the classes probably. If you get a paladin that crits and then smites, and he can go Nova with that one shot, it can be completely disgusting. And to top it off, he could have literally used one of his smite spells.
Mm-hmm.
Main attack roll hit, got a crit, and then decided to dump another smite
on top.
Another slate on top. That's a lot of dice. That's more than a fireball.
Oh, absolutely.
So why we would think that was lame, I'm not sure. But so here's the thing, right? If you want to highlight and showcase the coolness of those classes, which is to me is different than trying to convince your players that they're not lame. what you can do is use them in your game, use them as NPCs, use them as villains. When the party gets their ass handed to them by a high level cleric who isn't casting cure wounds, or maybe he is, maybe he's part of a group and he's putting the enemies back together faster than they can take them apart. Now all of a sudden that lame cleric isn't so lame anymore because he's making the things more challenging. The other thing is it because they perceive that those characters have to be played a certain way, and it's not so much they find them mechanically lame, but from a role playing scenario they find them lame. In that case, play them differently than they expect them to be played. Use them in ways that they're not used to seeing them. The paladin in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons really is just a holy champion at this point, a divine champion. Doesn't even have to be for a god. It can be for a cause. So it's not really the paladin of 2nd edition or even 3rd edition where
they don't have to be lawful good. They don't have to have a high charisma. But I mean, you could literally, bring a Paladin of Vengeance or even one of the more evil versions that are in the DMG or Unearthed Arcana and have him come and tear your party a new one.
Well, I still think they should have a high charisma. I mean, mechanically speaking, they're built off of that. But like how you describe that charisma could be different too. Like,
that's true.
You can describe it as more of an all factor. You like using things like more like intimidation or deception than likability and persuasion.
It could be more of a paladin of terror than beauty.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like their presence sets other people at ill ease. It's not so much that like, oh, gee golly, I like this guy and I want to hang out with him. No, you're like, oh my god, I just want to get out of the room.
And with the bard, I mean, you could take them as, some people view them as like, oh well, I'm just the guy that follows along playing the musical instrument and singing the tales of what everybody else does. But there was literally a whole selection of bards in earlier editions that is like, all right, one was an assassin, one was a weapons master, and you could totally go down those kind of roads.
So it happens they're the same one, but this is a blade.
Well, no, the assassin was different, and the assassin was the blade, but there was the
was also the blade.
Was it?
Yeah, they did the weapon displays and all. And you have them in the UAs, so you could bring them out and highlight them there if you wanted to. And even in the player's handbook, you have the College of Valor, which essentially you could put them out as a skald. You can have them show up. This Viking shows up.
Yeah, so they're warrior bards. That's exactly what skald means.
Or you could. Or you could have him be more tribal, and he's a combination of barbarian and bard. So you could do these things that make them a little more interesting, and isn't what your players are there. You can kind of like destroy their preconceived notions of what those classes are, and you could show them what they could be. Now that being said, they still may not want to play them, and that's fine. Just run the game, have fun. It doesn't really matter, And as to what Ted was saying earlier, like, he was speaking mechanically. You have a party of mages. It's this. Well, I would speak to that a little bit and say it also is you're going to tell a different story because they're going to have different interests. Like they may only be interested in delving and plumbing the depths of a particular dungeon if they believe there's a lost magic item there or a lost lore there. The gold may not interest them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or finding the monsters may not interest them all. So they might have very specific goals that are much different. Or if you have a party that consists of all thieves or rogues in this edition, and you might run a thieves guild type game.
Right.
So or if you have all divine characters in the party, you may play the campaign, and maybe the whole campaign has to do with some kind of sacred or holy pilgrimage.
Right. Now, we left off, cleric from our, deviations list, and in one of Dave's stories from ages past, it was probably 1st or 2nd edition because I think it happened before I even met Dave. They had just had a rough encounter with whoever, whatever it was, and they came upon a fellow adventuring party, and the party was beat up because they had an encounter. Well, the cleric offered to cure their wounds. And they did cause instead. Now, I don't know if we have a cause wounds in this kind of game.
We do.
But it's like, oh, no saving throw because you allowed it. So, boom, you start off yet another combat with the cleric, as opposed to healing the party Totally ripping them a new one.
Kills the character. Just kills the character. Yeah, that was a random encounter after they saved us from like a werewolf or something or some kind of monster. They actually the DM had a random encounter happen that saved us and then killed us.
Did he actually TPK the party?
There was only 2 players, but I died.
Okay.
I think the other character ran away. So yeah. So the question is, guys, how do you handle? The question is, guys, how do you handle lame character classes in your game? Do you try and convince your players, or you just roll with whatever they want to do? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can tweet at us at Nerdarchy.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.